So the other day I was looking at stocks with unusual call option, and I noticed that Harley-Davidson, the symbol is HOG, H-O-G, because they're called HOG choppers, baby. Yeah, we're talking about the most awesome motorcycles on the entire planet. And it turns out that their stock is turning up in an interesting way. And so that's what I'm going to show you today, is what's going on in the stock called Harley-Davidson, HOG. I was born and raised in a small mountain town in Northern California, extremely remote. And the Hells Angels bike game used to come through town. And they were the coolest freaking guys I can remember. If there's ever, kind of an iconic moment where I became a counterculture libertarian, that was it, for sure. Really, really had fun watching the Hells Angels coming through town on Harley-Davidson motorcycles, and really fell in love with the Harley-Davidson motorcycle sound. The knucklehead going pop, 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 pop. You know what I'm talking about. It's a hog. And so I'm going to talk about Harley-Davidson as an investment, which is kind of a surprise because it popped up on my screen. There were some options being purchased on it. I was like, why are options being purchased on Harley-Davidson? And when I went and looked at the chart, I could see why there is an argument for doing so. Harley-Davidson is an American manufacturer of heavyweight air-cooled cruiser motorcycles with engine displacements greater than 700 cc's. And this is a statement that I want to make very clear. And if it offends anybody, I don't care. They do not make rice burners from Japan. And we call all motorbikes that are from Japan or from Asia, we call them rice burners. If we could be more racist and get away with it on TV, we would. It was founded, Harley-Davidson was founded in 1903 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It was one of two major American motorcycle manufacturers to survive the Great Depression along with the Indian. And hey, it's a true story. If you got a guy rolling up on like one of those Yamazaki, Honda Zuga, Japanola motorbikes, they're like a pussy. You're just like, dude, you are a pussy. Same guy rolls up on a Harley and you're going, dude, you're cool. Fist pump, bam, damn, right on. Harley created my favorite, the chopper motorcycle style. Harley-Davidson manufactures its bikes in York, Pennsylvania, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Kansas City, Missouri, and recently, and by the way, they're closing that plant. Sales are weak. We're going to talk about that in a second. They also have an overseas plant in Manaus, Brazil, and in Bawal, India, to supply demand in Southern America and India for the rest of the world. The company markets products worldwide, licensed and markets the merchandise under its Harley-Davidson brand, and among that are shirts and apparel, leather jackets and stuff that you've seen, home decor and ornaments. It's just nuts. I mean, this thing is an American icon. There's accessories, there's toys, there's scale figures of the motorcycles, and there are video games out there based on the motorcycle line and the community. Yeah, Harley rocks. William Davidson, Walter Davidson, Arthur Davidson, and William Harley built this flimsy, nasty moped that could barely make it up the hill without pedaling. And, well, actually couldn't make it up the hill. It had to be pedaled. And it was basically a motor that was slapped into a bicycle frame. And it was flimsy, just like the old moped problems you've had. I mean, I've owned mopeds, right? I mean, all of us hog lovers have owned mopeds. I think most of us. They improved the moped design with a Merkel loop frame, which you're familiar with, where the motor sits lower under the frame. It gives it a much better center of gravity, and it allowed the motorbike to start using very large engines. And this was in 1903, and surprisingly, the Davidson family received support from Evinrude Automotive, right? Evinrude Automotive was actually supportive. Evinrude, if you know Evinrude creates boat motors, right? I mean, if you're cool, you know this stuff. And if you're like some sort of like, if you're like Trump, you don't know this stuff, right? Because, Trump has never rode a motorbike, and Trump has never had to run a boat or go fishing or anything like that because he's, a little rich daddy's boy. But hey, anyway, Harley-Davidson started selling motorcycle mail order kits in 1905. Something that a lot of people don't know is that they really didn't have capital. They didn't have money at the beginning. They didn't have factories. So they had to go out and actually sell the motorbike through mail order. The firm built the Chestnut Street Juneau Avenue factory, and that is now the corporate headquarters of the company. The company made about 50 motorbikes a year at the very beginning, back in 1905, at the very, very, very beginning. A really huge impact on the company was when Bill Harley graduated from Wisconsin-Madison with a mechanical engineering degree in 1907. And that really brought the intelligence into the planning and production of Harley-Davidson motorcycles. And in fact, shortly thereafter in 1913, Harleys were V-twins, right? And of course, it required a lot of engineering to pull that off. Then from 1912 to 1958, Davidson used this full floating seat thing that had this spring inside this tube, which is a major innovation. It's really hard today. You'd hate it. But it was a big deal then because the bikes on other bikes had just the seat basically hitting the metal going bang, 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 bang. And production in that year, in 1914, shot up to 16,284 machines because of this new V-twin design that they had. In 1917, when the United States entered into World War I, the military ordered 20,000 motorcycles. Now, this wasn't the first time that Harley had been involved in the United States military. In fact, Harley-Davidson bikes had been used in the Pancho Villa expedition to go get Pancho Villa and whack the psycho jerk job. I actually used to live in northern Mexico, and I remember this church where there were bullet holes rilling the side of the building because of Pancho Villa. He took all the young guys in the village and took them up, put them against the wall, and killed them. That's how Pancho Villa became strong, by killing any opposition. So he was really pretty much of a monster, and Harley helped get rid of that monster, El Pancho Villalo, in Mexico nut job land. And by the way, Mexico is just totally screwed up now, and it's because of the old Spanish domination down in that country. That's a whole other topic that I'll discuss another day. But by 1920, Harley-Davidson had grown into the largest motorcycle manufacturer in the world. They were producing 28,189 machines per year that were sold in 67 countries. And Otto Walker in 1921, the year after, set this monstrous world speed record, and took a motorcycle and actually pushed the thing over 100 miles per hour, which was just absolutely amazing. The 74 cubic inch V-twin was introduced in 1921. That classic teardrop gas tank that they like to customize in the choppers came in 1925. That is so cool and so iconic for the HOG, the Harley. The front brake was an innovation in 1928. Then the D model was produced from 1929 to 1931, and that front brake gave you more control in stopping, right? I don't know if you know, but like, for instance, if your back tire starts to slide, you can give just a little bit of pressure on your front brake sometimes to bring the bike back into control. And the front brake is just a major innovation. You have to know how to use it right. If you hit it too hard, you can flip the bike, but the front brake was a big deal. Riders of Indian motorcycles derisively referred to the three-cylinder Harley, or referred to this bike as a three-cylinder Harley, because the generator was upright and parallel to the front cylinder. And if you remember that, then you are truly a HOG fan like myself. Now, the Harley-Davidson company manufactured industrial power plants based on their motorcycle engines, a three-wheel delivery Cervicar that survived the Depression. And the Cervicar, surprisingly, was produced until 1973. And of course, these are major collector items today if you can get them. The Knucklehead OHV engines were introduced in 1936, and that's that engine that goes tack, 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 tack as it rips down the road, right? World War II was another major opportunity for the Harley-Davidson company and employees to help in the war effort. And in fact, Harley-Davidson employees very proudly created more than 90,000 military motorcycles for the Allies. Now, it's important for you to understand that there's this enormous culture of pride within Harley-Davidson, right? I mean, Harley-Davidson is right at the heart of what Americans believe America is great for. I can't think of a single person from a single level of society, whether they're straight or gay, whether they're stoners or not stoners, whether they're alcoholics or non-alcoholics, or whatever, that don't just love Harley-Davidson motorcycles. And after the war, Harley-Davidson was producing a large range of V-twin motorcycles that were highly successful on racetracks and then for private owners as well. In 1969, one of the worst moments in the history of the company was when AMF, the American Machine and Foundry Company, bought the company, streamlined production, and slashed the workforce. An extremely poorly managed large corporation, and it ended up filtering down into the company and caused a labor strike, and very much lower quality bikes were produced. They were less expensive and had a lot poorer performance and handling and quality compared to Japanese motorcycles. Sales and quality tanked, and the company almost went bankrupt. In fact, during that period of time in the 60s and the 70s, the Harley-Davidson name became mocked as Harley-Davidson, Hardly Drivable, Hogley Ferguson, and the nickname HOG became derogatory. In fact, I remember a number of my friends were major motorcycle racers, and they were just trashing on it because they were like, you can't possibly think of buying a HOG because the performance is so poor and the quality of the machine is so poor compared to Japanese motorcycles. And of course, now today that's shifted. You have a lot higher quality production now in the United States motorcycles than you do in the Japanese motorcycles. Another factor is in 1977, following the successful manufacture of the Liberty Edition to commemorate America's bicentennial, sales improved. Harley produced what was to become one of its most controversial models in 1976, the year before, and that was the Harley-Davidson Confederate Edition, and that's why they came out with the Liberty Edition a year after that. In 1981, thank God, that piece of garbage AMF sold the company to a group of 13 investors. That group was led by Von Bales and Willie G. Davidson. So the Davidson family came back to the board with $80 million, took over the company. The inventory was strictly controlled using the new just-in-time system that the Japanese were using. And in the early 80s, Harley-Davidson claimed that Japanese manufacturers were importing motorcycles into the U.S. in such volume as to harm or threaten domestic producers. So after an investigation, the United States International Trade Commission reported to President Reagan, and Reagan in 1933 hammered the Japs with a 45% tariff on imported bikes with engine capacities greater than 700 cc's. And if you're offended because I said Japs, go watch another TV channel. This is HOG, this is the Harley-Davidson, this is America, and this is great. Japanese bikes are not. Harley-Davidson rice burners are not. Harley-Davidson subsequently rejected offers from these same Japanese motorcycle makers of assistance when they ran into problems. The company offered to drop the request for a tariff in exchange for loan guarantees from the Japanese that said, fine, you screw us, we'll screw you. Harley-Davidson developed its famous Softail series of motorcycles in 1984 with the FX ST. And then in 1980, the Fat Boy made Harley-Davidson the sales leader in the heavyweight class over 750cc market. I mean, they're both amazing. I love both the Softail and the Fat Boy. They're both just amazing. And you can see the difference on the back end of the bike between the two models. Construction started on the 130,000 square foot. That's 12,000 square meter Harley-Davidson Museum in the Menominee Valley on June 1st in 2006. It opened in 2008 and houses the company's vast collection of historic motorcycles and corporate archives. And over there, they also have a restaurant, a cafe, and a meeting space. And it's definitely the place that I want to go. If we ever get over to Milwaukee, it's going to be my first stop. In 1998, the first Harley-Davidson overseas factory opened in the Manaus, Brazil Free Economic Zone, producing motorcycles for the Southern Hemisphere market. And during the late 1990s and the first decade of the 21st century, Harley-Davidson was caught channel stuffing, and this tanked the 2003 price because of the managerial dishonesty when it was revealed to the public. CEO Jeffrey Bluestein profited $42 million on the exercise of his employee stock options, which was extremely criticized on Wall Street, but nothing happened. These CEOs are just complete dirtbags. They look so nice, they're so friendly to you, and then they just screw you blind behind the scenes. And that's what Bluestein did. It really pissed off employees and disgusted everybody. So not all has been rosy with Harley over the years. Harley ended up being named as a defendant in numerous class action suits filed by investors who claimed they were intentionally defrauded by Harley-Davidson's management and directors. A Raleigh, North Carolina police officer, Charles Paul, was killed in 2002 when his police touring motorcycle crashed because of a high-speed wobble. This really caused a lot of problems because so many of the police in our country use Harley-Davidson, and the California CHPs actually did a test and showed that there was indeed a wobble at high speeds on the test track. And because of that, it created a lot of problems for Harley. And then in 2007, just because of the bad treatment, the dirtbag CEOs taking millions out of the company and the employees not getting raises and stuff, 2,700 employees at Harley-Davidson's largest manufacturer plant in York, Pennsylvania, went on strike. What's going on right now with Harley-Davidson? Well, the Indian released its Roadmaster Elite, which sells for $36,900, about $37,000 is the MSRP. The Street Fighter, which is a small street bike, sells for $12,000. So Harley's going after a different niche than Indian, but Harley's reporting decreasing sales and Indian is reporting increasing sales, and of course that has people concerned. And what I want you to notice today is that we have a huge jump in price. And of course this is something that should be tested with an option. And this is unfolding right now today. I actually didn't anticipate this, but you can see that the stock has a big jump in price. And this is probably because of the trade, possibly because of the trade war, right? Because of focusing sales on United States bikes, and it's being harder for the Asians to penetrate our market. If you take a look at the monthly chart for each of these stocks, you can notice that they've been declining on a long downtrend. I don't like to buy stocks until they start to break up against that downtrend. When we look at the monthly chart over here on Polaris, you can see that it's actually started to break that downtrend, and we've got a good flat spot of resistance right here that we're looking for a break over. So my inclination right now is probably more towards Polaris, but you could test with options in either of these. Obviously the buy point on Polaris, a serious buy point on Polaris, is when it breaks up above this. We've got a break in the downtrend. You could test Polaris right now. Probably stronger on making a test with Polaris and Harley-Davidson, but I don't think you're going to go wrong with either of these because you see that the stocks are spinning upwards nicely on HOG, and this is why you've got the call options being purchased. Have a fun weekend now.